I think Thrice joined for like a few days, and like maybe 4 days. I think they were just starting like to get recognition. They weren't a big band yet, but so Joe said, listen to Thrice and like do what they're doing. Yeah, and I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, a big shout out to all my Patreon supporters, everyone who has sent a random donation through Venmo or PayPal, my Instagram followers, everyone who's given a rating on their podcast app, and everyone who listens to this thing. You are all fucking awesome. Useless ID is a punk rock band from Haifa, Israel, known for blending melodic hardcore with emotionally charged lyrics. Formed in 94, they gained international attention after signing with Kung Fu Records and collaborating with bands like the Ataris and producing with Bill Stevenson over at the Blasting Room. Over the years, Useless ID has built a loyal global fan base through relentless touring and a discography that spans introspective punk anthems to politically driven tracks. It seems like I'm on a Kung Fu Records / Fat Records theme right now, so I was like, alright, let me just kind of see what other bands are out there. And then I saw these guys' name pop up, I was like, oh fuck, I remember these guys, so definitely gotta get them on. So we reached out to Instagram, asked if they'd like to be on. Yotam said yes, and got him on the Skype, and this is what we chat about. Seeing Kid Dynamite in a New Brunswick Basement show, Kris Roe, moving away from Fat Records Drumbeat, being on Kung Fu Records, Sugarcult, doing mushrooms at a festival, sharing a tour bus with the Used, Bill Stevenson punching him in the stomach, did they like being on Fat even though the label sound changed, a tip from Tony Sly that he still uses to this day, why they're not currently playing, the Pixies story, and a ton more. Check out his label, California Sounds. There's a link in the show notes, so you can go to their Instagram. It's California_Sounds_records. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast, you go to patreon.com/thiswasthescene. It's only $1 a month, and you can cancel whenever you want. There's also a link at the top of my website that says donate, or you can click on one of the links in my Instagram, and that's about it. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. So in the email you sent me, did you play shows with Kid Dynamite? Because you mentioned Midtown, that makes sense. But you said Dan Yemin, you were friends with him. Did you meet him during Lifetime days or during Kid Dynamite?
I played like 2 shows with the band with Useless ID before they did their first tour, and which was kind of like it was more like less than a tour. They just wanted to kind of relocate to the U.S., so they found themselves in the East Bay and just playing local shows. They actually played a show with Lifetime. And there was a funny story with that. They put Lifetime before Useless ID on the bill, and the guys were like, "Oh hell no, we're not playing." Like it was just weird because we're not going on after Lifetime. Like Lifetime, it was like a Good Riddance, Lifetime, Useless ID. So they did a quick swap over there. And then, like a year or so later, they already returned to Israel. I rejoined because the bass player left. And then, Lifetime was pretty much over and Kid Dynamite was in the picture. And I just fell in love with them. Yeah, I think no, maybe Lifetime was still going. But maybe it was like my second tour. Yeah, that's what it was. It was like 98. I found myself at a New Brunswick Basement show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I managed to catch one of those. It was Hot Water Music. Should I tell the story of that? Because it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it, and then I'm going to go back to how, you getting involved in the scene and the band stuff. But if we're here, like, fuck it, tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, if once you get me going, I go. So
I'll try to rein you in if I feel like. But if you're telling great stories, it's like, this is what this is about.
Oh, I hope they're great. But anyways, so we would always hear about these New Brunswick Basement shows, and I think Lifetime also have a song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I have to go because I have a family in Manalapan, New Jersey, and I don't think it's so far. So they were doing Kid Dynamite, Hot Water Music, Ensign, and Radar Mercury. I don't know, one of those bands. That was like one day, and the other day was the next day was at Coney Island High with Hot Water Music, Leatherface, and Error Type 11, and no Kid Dynamite. But at the same time, this band that I really liked, Limp, was playing Coney Island High the day that Kid Dynamite was playing New Brunswick, and then a different place the next night. And I was like, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to go see Kid Dynamite because they're the best ever. So I get to the place and I see Jason from Hot Water Music standing outside, and like a bunch of people are like scattered outside. And I don't know what got into me, but I just ran straight to him and I'm like, "Did Kid Dynamite play yet?" I was just completely ignoring that he's the bass player of Hot Water Music. I've seen him. We've seen each other one time in the past, like when Useless ID played Gainesville. So yeah, that makes sense. So this was like the second time I was in the States with the Useless ID, and before our tour, I would go there for like a few weeks to be with my family. So he's like, "Yeah, they're not here yet." Then the guys showed up in a van, and I just ran straight to them. I was like so eager to buy a shirt, and they're just getting out of the van. And Jason, and I'm like, hey man, I love you guys. He's like, cool. And he's like, loading out. So I'm like, I help him with the gear. We're loading out, and like, I really want to buy a shirt from you. And I was like, kind of like the way I'm talking now. That's how I was back then, but probably worse. So just like punishing the hell out of them. And then I came up to Dan Yemen and I'm like, hey, my band played with you guys and with you in Lifetime, Useless ID. He's like, oh, hell yeah, I remember them. And, this was only like a year and a half later. So, of course, he would remember. But if I could just like kind of cut the story a bit so don't go overboard with it. Once they played, like there was like this total hype about Kid Dynamite right at that time. And I'm sure right when they got set up and right as they were about to go, I was like pushed to the very front. I was like pushed to the point where I was holding Dan Yemen's mic, like for him not to like, and they're just about to start. They start the show and all hell broke loose in that basement. That was like one of the craziest hardcore shows I've ever been to, and I've been to a few by then, but the basement was so sweaty. And by the time that was over, like it was like over in the blink of an eye. It was like, I don't know, 25-minute set of like 30 songs or whatever. And then when Hot Water Music played, I was just watching from the back and I'm like, damn, Kid Dynamite, they just took the air out of this room. Like they just completely ate it up and like, damn, they destroyed it.
What album were they playing at that point? Was that the first one?
Oh, the first one. Yeah. I think they played the whole first one. I remember they played that song Heart Attack and maybe like a few covers or something. They were just amazing. It was like so much energy. And the thing is I was like I was kind of stuck after the show because it was too late and I didn't have a ride back. So that's when I came up to like Chuck Reagan and I came up to Dan Yemen and they're all like, yeah, we're like a big punk rock family here. We're gonna make sure you get home or we'll get wherever you need to get to. And luckily enough, I had a ride to Port Authority. Yeah, I had a ride to Authority. So it's kind of weird because I was already in New Jersey. So they took me to New York to just go back to New Jersey, but whatever.
So kind of like, to go back and lead back up to this time period, I usually like to do is talk about how people got involved in the scene and then how the band starts. But it sounds like you grew up in Israel, right?
No, I actually grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, okay. But they grew up in Israel.
Yeah, they grew up in Israel. And then my family, my mother decided that she had enough of the U.S. and just as my dad was starting to do very well with his whole architecture thing, and he was like, "Oh, things are working out," and she's like, "Yeah, I want to get the hell out of here." Me, I used to listen to rap as a kid or whatever was in at the time. Late '80s, early '90s. Once I discovered Nirvana, so that kind of changed everything for me, and I got like more into rock and stuff like that. So I was already like a few months into like playing guitar and learning guitar, and with all these dreams, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in the U.S., I'm gonna play guitar, I'm gonna form a band, and they're like, oh no, you're not. We're moving to the desert. We're moving to where camels are free. And so we get to Israel, and then I just kind of became like an outcast. I was like, there was no way I was talking the way I'm talking now. I was just like quiet and shy, and I would just be a teenager in my room playing guitar. And then the first school year came by. I was just I had like this big like culture shock with everything, new language, the way the kids dressed, the way the mentality of the kids. So I was just kind of like hanging out with the weirdos, but I heard a bit about bands, but I didn't discover like punk rock yet. I already knew obviously of like Sex Pistols and Exploited and stuff like that, or like any name that Nirvana would drop in interviews if I had a way to listen to it. I really remember the name Black Flag all the time, but I never heard what Black Flag sounded like. Fast forward to the second year of school, I got kicked out of that school. I was moved into an art school. So over there, there were all these like sort of like troublemakers and like all these other like weird kids. So you'd see a kid in the hallway with like bleached hair. You'd see another kid with like, braids and stuff like that. So I was like, I kind of got in with those guys, and that's how, they introduced me to hardcore. And I'm like, oh my God, this totally makes sense with all these other bands I've been hearing about. So we would pass like dubbed cassette tapes to each other, but more of them they started giving me, and I was like, my whole world was blown away. Like the Gorilla Biscuits, Minor Threat. It actually started with seeing Green Day on TV, and I kind of liked that. I was like, oh, this is cool. And they were like, oh, you like Green Day, so you'll probably like this. And they gave me like Bad Religion, which sounded to me like faster, more melodic Green Day. And I'm like, wow, there's this whole world. And that's pretty much how I got into like punk and hardcore. And around that time in Israel, people were just like in this little scene. They were just kind of like mentioning this band, Useless ID. They were like a mystery band. Like no one, I didn't see them. I just like heard about them, and there were like all these stories. Like one of them was, he saw all these shows in the U.S. and he brought skateboard to Israel, and like, they became like these mystery people. Sure enough, I formed my own first band. It was called Rampage, and it was like, like New York hardcore. I came from New York, so I already had the accent, so why not, right? Yeah, so we started rehearsing. We were like a trio, and I played a decent, cool punk rock, but the hardcore punk. But yeah, like the second or third rehearsal, these guys walked in, and I just had a feeling it was Useless Idea, and it was, and we stuck around to their rehearsal, and that's how my connection with them started. I would just eavesdrop on their rehearsals and just learn from them and study them, and like, that's how you did it back then. That's how you did it in the 1994, 95. You watched people play live. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have any access to anything. If you got a hold of a cassette tape of something, you were lucky. It was like every time there was like a different band, it's like, oh, Bad Brains, wow. Oh, this, wow. Scream, wow. I'm gonna listen to this for a week now. That was that scene. That was the scene in Israel for me. Like, and it was super exciting because I feel like I got in there just at the time where, there was kind of like a resurrection of like Shelter was suddenly on MTV, and I had just discovered Youth of Today. I just discovered Gorilla Biscuits, and like shortly after, suddenly Civ is on TV. So I'm like, whoa, something's happening with this like punk hardcore thing. I actually didn't really have a problem. I was actually happy to see, like, one time I saw Descendents on MTV, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. So I started out as a fan. When Useless ID ran out of options for a bass player, even though I was a guitar player, they told me, hey, go get a bass and and we'll have you try out for the band. Yeah, and I got the gig.
So when you joined, they had already toured in the U.S. You said earlier that you joined the band and then you left or got kicked out, and then you went back in the band, or did I hear that wrong?
No. Okay, so they didn't tour in the U.S. yet, and as I told you, when I would eavesdrop on the rehearsals, when I was just like, we would hear, hey, they're playing. It wasn't, normal people go to punk shows to see a band. In Haifa, Israel, a punk show would happen like maybe once a year. No, actually, there were punk shows, but not Useless ID shows. So we would just go to their rehearsals. Hey, they're playing tonight at 7 p.m. at the rehearsal space. Let's go watch them. During one of these times, the guitar player, a guy, once again, I didn't have a ride home, so he offered to take me home. And then he told me of all his like ideas. He was like, yeah, man, I'm going to finish my army services, because he was serving in the Israeli, in the IDF at the time. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to finish with this, and I want to get the hell out of here. I want to fly to the U.S. I want to take the band to the U.S. and do this the right way. And I was like, wow, I want to be a part of that. I want to get in with that guy. When I just got to Israel, I just like had a super hard time fitting in, because eventually I realized that I'm not going to try to fit in, because I don't relate to 90-something% of the kids in the school. I'm just like this kid with other thoughts in my head and other, like a different upbringing, I guess. Like I didn't think that I would be good to serve in the army, and I didn't really have that many friends. We were kind of like a small group of the hardcore punks. So I was looking for my way out as well. I'm like, yeah, even though my family brought me back here, it doesn't mean I have to stay here. So I joined them when I was like 17 for 2 shows. And then I had another year of school, so I couldn't fly with them for that first run of the East Bay, which I mentioned before. Yeah, that's what happened. So when they got back, I finished school, failed miserably. I kind of dropped out of that last year of school. I don't think I completed that year, but they were like, okay, are you ready now? And I'm like, let's go. Yeah. Age 18, first U.S. tour.
How was that? Like when you came over here and you're back in the States, were you just, I don't know, like how did you feel?
First of all, I felt great to be back in the States, but we started in San Francisco because that's where kind of like the band's base was either in LA because Guy's sister lived there, or it was in San Francisco, or like they more towards the East Bay from the previous time they've spent there. So they had already their connections. Funny enough, their first connection was because of me. They played a show at Gilman Street. They spoke to this guy, Craig. Are you familiar with the band Your Mother, What Happens Next, and All You Can Eat? You know those bands?
No.
Okay, so those are bands from the 90s. They were like All You Can Eat played shows with no effects, and then those guys went on to do this like crossover trash core band called What Happens Next, which is great. You should check it out if you haven't. Yeah, so they spoke to that guy, Craig. And he's like, hey, do you know Tommy? Because I went by Tommy back then. I didn't revert back to Yotam. So big mistake, by the way. It caused me many years of, what's your name? Yotam? Yotam. I was kind of like the connection. They were like, yeah, we hang out with this guy. So yeah, so they became friends. And so we got into San Francisco. Guy picked us up in the Dodge van. We all put like, I think $1,000 each. And we drove to this punk house. I think it was called the Franklin House. It was called the Franklin House, where Floyd from Fat Records and all these like different people would live there throughout the 90s. That's where we spent the night. And then, so we kind of started out in the West Coast. So everything was still like new to me because I've just been there when I was like maybe like 8 or 9 years old, like with my mom. So that's the memories I have from San Francisco. So, but once we made it to the East Coast, I called up friends from my childhood to see if anyone was up to doing anything. One of them became a punk rocker himself, so that was cool. So we hung out. We went to see some shows. But that first tour, some people are fit for touring life, and some people it's like a total shock. Some people quit midway of the tour. Some people just like, yeah, this is not for me. I can't sleep every day. I can't sleep every day in a different place that's not my bed, or like I can't sleep on a floor. But we did all of that on that first tour. We were just ruling the floors and ruling the couches, sleeping outside, sleeping in the van, just I feel like what people say they get from the serving in the Israeli army or the IDF. So some people say, yeah, it gave me all these tools for life. This was my tools for life. This was my understanding of the world. And I loved it. It completely transformed me. It just opened up my head to like so many ideas. And yeah, man, it was a blast.
Which albums did you start recording on? Was it at the last one on Falafel Records, or is it when you guys got on Kung Fu?
No, this was still Falafel Records. Funny thing that happened, we played 2 shows one day. One, we played at the Old Ironsides with, I think that's in Sacramento, with Teen Idols. And then we tried to get onto a show with the Ataris. There was like this band Sweet Diesel playing, the Ataris were playing, and a couple other bands. We made it there. I think we wanted to get on that show. We weren't really on that show, but we wanted to see the Ataris. So as we're pulling up, this is what I remember. Maybe the other guys remember something else, but I remember this vividly because I know I wasn't driving. I wasn't allowed to drive the Useless ID van for years to come.
Okay.
But I didn't have a license either, so I was in the back seat, and like once we pulled up, I jumped out of the van and I saw this guy with like bleached spikes hauling his Marshall cabinet. So I'm like, hey man, did the Ataris play yet? And he's like, we are the Ataris. And yeah, we did. Who are you? And and that's how we started talking to them. Then the guys parked the van, and we just became friends with them. So we gave them I think it was a demo of like a recording of our album. Or the album was yet out on CD. This is where I kind of like, I'm not sure like what we gave them, but we gave them a recording of that album on Falafel Records. And Kris Roe from the Ataris really liked it. So he eventually got back to us with the idea of doing like a split with them. Yeah, he kind of opened the doors for us in the U.S. in a very big way, by the way. Kris Roe, he used to go to shows as a fan. He used to give his cassette tape to bands. Yeah, so eventually that cassette tape made its way to Joe, and that's how the Ataris thing. So yeah, that's what we learned from. We're like, yeah, you give your cassette tape. They gave the cassette tape to Tony Sly. They gave the Useless ID demo to Fat Mike. That's how it was.
Were you stationed in the U.S. at this point, or were you living in Israel and then flying over to U.S. to tour and then going back home?
We were living in Israel, but we were flying. We were doing a lot of back and forth. We got on these shows with the Vandals and the Ataris, so we did that. We had had to do like a photo shoot and all these other things at the Kung Fu office, and then we did the record. So we had like this relationship with flying back and forth. So we weren't really stationed in the U.S.
But when you're coming back over here and then you record the album, actually talk about that. Like, how was recording Bad Story, Happy Ending? Like, what was what was that whole experience like?
Okay, it was much like up until then the recording experience I had or we had as a band was just like recording on ADAT. There was talk of recording tracks like like a 8-track, 16-track or whatever it was at the time. That was the first time I think we all felt that we're with an actual producer, because all the experience we've had until then was pretty much us going into a studio and recording our things, and some guy sitting behind the console just pressing and record, and we were like, yeah, that was shit, let's do it again. So we kind of were very critical of ourselves. Also, Angus from Orange Whip Studios, he was just a sweetheart, a complete deer with an A. Along with that, we had Kris Roe, like Kung Fu was like, hey, would you be down if Kris Roe produces it? And we'd listened to this other band that was recorded right before us, same setting. They were called Antifreeze. They were kind of like very similar to the Ataris, but I thought their album sounded really good. It was also done at Orange Whip, and then Atari's Blue Skies was done at Orange Whip, so it was like a no-brainer. It was like it was a whole learning experience. I mean, I learned that there's a thing called flat and sharp in my voice. You're coming there with all this, I wouldn't say ego. I think I came over there with like this idea of learning, but this was the first album that I wrote the bulk of the songs. We kind of skipped over that, but at some point I became the singer, because I would just writing songs like crazy. And the guys were like, all right, so you want to try singing them? So this was like my batch of songs. So I was kind of like a bit cautious about them. I was like kind of very, very focused. But I got my ass kicked as well,
What do you mean?
At the studio. Well,
just do it again, do it again, do it again.
Yeah. Do it again. I remember there was this one like vocal melody or like one harmony that I was doing that I just, they were singing like one thing back at me, and I just couldn't get it. I'm like, da da da, and they're like, no, da da da, and I'm like, that's what I'm doing. They're like, no, you're not. And then even my guys were saying, yeah, there's that one note that you're doing something else. So it was a whole like school of using your ears, using your voice, learning how to work together as a band for this one thing that we're doing, instead of just like fighting, and which we've had our shares of fighting for sure over the years at the studio, but yeah, you learn, right?
Well, this was the first time that you got to record with a band, right?
No, I played 7 songs on the Dead's Not Punk, the Useless ID Falafel Records album, because I wasn't that good on bass yet. Ishai, the guitar player, he played the rest of the bass parts. So that was that recording. But I record. I always had like another band, like a side band, where I would just like scream, like I would sing hardcore, like my first band Rampage, or like I had this other band Negative Impact. So I would like let out my frustrations on the mic, because I knew I was only playing bass in Useless ID. But once I became the singer, I started singing a bit more melodic. So I kind of like, okay, now everything's kind of like in this one place. So I had some experience recording. I wouldn't say a lot.
Well, I meant like with them, like with the band. So you had been in the studio with them.
Oh, with the band. With Bad Story, we just like got a new drummer. So that was new in itself. So we were kind of like feeling each other out with him, because he came from like reggae music, but he was a hard hitter, and we liked the way he played. We kind of got adjusted to that, so everything was kind of like came together, like all the like the musical influences we were listening to at the time. So it was kind of like we're kind of like learning each other, like, or even relearning each other. Because Guy, who was the singer before I started singing, eventually took over the vocal duties. He was supposed to sing like a couple songs on the album, and one of the songs, like, I ended up singing. He was like, yeah, you do it.
When you guys were in the studio for Bad Story, what was that dynamic like with you guys? Was it tense, or was it pretty easy, even keel, or easy flowing? Like, what was it like?
Well, it was a bit stressful. We were doing guide guitars and guide bass. We were sitting, me, Ishai, the drummer Ido, we were sitting together in one room. So he'll have something to listen to while he played. Like we didn't like pre-record guide guitars, and then we just tried to get that live feel. We didn't do Pro Tools yet. Pro Tools was the next album. So we were trying to get that live feel, which I like. I've done like many albums like that since, like not Useless ID albums. Yeah, I remember us arguing. Me getting frustrated with the typewriter beat, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the fat beat.
I remember I heard you talking with Wagon Shoots about that when he kind of shifted from Kid Dynamite to Good Riddance, because Good Riddance play more of that thing, and Dynamite in New Jersey, they do. So our drummer Ido, he was struggling with the NoFX beat. So Kris Roe was sitting, in the other end in the talkback, and we would hear him, hey, all right, why don't you just do the Lifetime beat? And then he would, like, in our headphones, he would go da 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 da. He said do that instead of do that do that do that do that. So I really remember vividly that whole like conversation of him telling it, and then we're like, okay, let's try that. So yeah, we were kind of learning to play our parts.
Well, did that change like the songs that you guys had brought into the studio with the different drum beat? When you came in, you had a different drum beat in mind, and he's starting to play the Lifetime beat, and then because that's the base of it, and then you guys start recording over it. So did that change the sound of the band because he did that?
Yeah, and for the better, because from day one, we sort of like, even before I joined the band. When Useless ID were a band before me, I think they pretty quickly pigeonholed themselves into like, hey, this is what we do. We like Fat Records. We like Epitaph. It's like, NoFX, Down by Law, Pennywise, Bad Religion. That's the style of the band, and don't interfere, That was like the idea. So the drummer before him would play the the NoFX beat. Once Ido came in, so he could play that, but I think he would kind of get tired of it at some point. And many drummers have their own variation of it, except, Smelly from NoFX. He's like the god of just doing that effortlessly, and he could eat dinner while he's doing that. But the rest of us, we have to figure out a way to do it. So I think Kris Roe helped our drummer Ido kind of find his thing in this, that you don't always have to do that double thing. You could somehow kind of get around it, and it's cool. I think I like the way Gorilla Biscuits do it, and I like the way Lifetime do it. So I like to have that influence in our music.
How soon after you recorded it did the album come out? Do you remember? Kind of a loaded question to be like, oh, go back to that time and give me exact dates. But
I mean, I have it written down somewhere, but
okay.
But I think it was like the way they do it. What was it, like 4 to 6 months or something like that? There was like a stretch of time. So the album came out. If you want me to to kind of like break it down for you how it did in the world, I think in Israel it was received pretty well, amongst our fans, because they kind of got used to me being the singer. Some people were like, why is he singing? Even Joe from Kung Fu, like during the demo phase, he was like, wait, this is not the band I heard before. But everyone's like Kris Roe was like, trust me, that it's going to be great. But the biggest surprise was, the U.S., we were doing like all these shows with Vandals and the Ataris, and we were kind of like getting a push from the label. But the biggest surprise, which happened organically, happened in Japan. Like, we were invited to play Japan for the first time. When we got there, it was the first time I felt like I was treated like a rock star, whatever that meant. For the first tour I did with Useless ID, I was like in my head, I was like, oh yeah, so they spent a half a year over here, so we're gonna show up over there, and we're gonna be picked up from the airport, and we have shows with Good Riddance and Strung Out. It's gonna be great. And that wasn't reality. I had a quick reality check that we're not playing with Good Riddance, but which later on we did, and we became great friends with.
Real quick, if you're needing an explainer video, that's what I do for a living. My company is drive80.com. You can email me at mike@drive80.com for some samples and pricing. Industries that I've created explainer animations for over the last 14 years are tech, software, medical, pharma, recruiting, nonprofits, accounting, ed tech, and more. That's all I'm going to say, so now back to the show.
When we got to Japan the first time, we were just picked up from the airport. The shows were amazing. They were packed rooms of hundreds of people. We played a rooftop of Tower Records, and the crowd they were like very welcoming and very accepting, and just like once we stopped playing, everyone's like standing like in a straight line behind each other waiting to meet us, and I was like, wow, but I don't think it did anything to us as people. We were just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then many years down the road, we've just been to Japan almost every year since, up until COVID. So we've been there, I don't know, 15 to 20 times already.
When it comes out on Kung Fu in the States and you guys are touring over here, what kind of tours were you doing that first couple of years? Because you do that, and then a couple of years later do the next album. So with that, the first release on Kung Fu, what were the tours you went on? Who were some of the bands you played with?
Okay, so this is what I remember. I remember we were touring hard in the U.S. before Bad Story, like leading up to Bad Story, and that's when we started getting shows with the Vandals and the Ataris. And then at some point we had like another kind of like a week and a half with them. Trying to think. I think it would have probably been on that same run before Bad Story. But once Bad Story was out, I think the next thing we did was 2002 Warped Tour. So we had Japan, we toured Europe with Frenzel Rum in a bus. That was the first time on a bus, by the way. And I was like, wow. And we met Sum 41 at the airport, and they invited us to the show. They played Brixton Academy. So yeah, that was 2001. But yeah, US, we didn't really do a tour on Bad Story. Like the tour of Bad Story was doing the Warped Tour, because right after that we recorded the next album.
Were you guys on that? I think there was a Warped Tour comp. No, I'm thinking of the 2004 one. Were you guys ever on any of the video comps that Warped Tour put out?
I think we had that song "No Time for Me to Be a Teenager," but I don't know. I don't remember if it was the Warped Tour comp or if it was the Kung Fu comp. Because on Kung Fu comps they definitely put us, but Warped Tour, I don't remember. Maybe, but we were on all the posters and promotion.
How was it being on Kung Fu? Like, what did they do for you when the first record and the second record? Like, how did it feel being on that record label?
Okay, so I think enough years passed that I can tell you the earlier story with Kung Fu. So Joe, he liked the demos that we had done. Like he was cool with it, but he was asking like, who's the singer? And we're backing up here to like 1999, like late 99, early 2000, and we were like, maybe we should send it to Fat Mike and just see what he says, But we're not doing it. So we send it to Fat Mike. And he's like, did you sign with Joe yet? And we're like, I didn't know. So he's like, all right, give me a week. Don't sign with Joe. We gave him a week. We're just like, we're actually waiting around. But fair enough. And this is good for Mike's personality. He came back and he's like, listen, I like it, but if you said yes to Joe, you should go with Joe. But I have a feeling that if we had not had that thing with Kung Fu, maybe Fat would sign us. So it's kind of like in the back of our minds, we always wanted to be on Fat, but we were happy to be on Kung Fu. And to be honest, Kung Fu treated us well. I have only good memories with Joe and Sandra. Maybe a bit less good memories than some other people there. We don't have to get into that, but
If you want to, you can, but I told you don't have to.
Yeah, we'll save it for the book.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean from my memory, I remember a lot of things. Maybe I remember too much sometimes, but I remember that they gave us like a budget of 15,000 for the first album. Then it was like 20, next one, and 25 for the last one. But it was like a 3-album deal. But once we did Redemption, I'm kind of jumping in between.
That's fine. We can jump forward. I can always take it back.
Yeah. So, but once we got to Redemption, we were just like ready to move on, because I think the label was kind of slowing down as well back then. 2004, 2005. It was like kind of like what's happening.
Well, what did you feel about the scene at that point when you guys were on the road? Did you see it changing where it affected you negatively, or did you just blend right in?
You're talking about
2001 to 2004, like that era, where it starts to kind of shift a lot.
I think there were so many bands going on, and the bands that were kind of getting the exposure were more like Good Charlotte, Newfound Glory, The Used, who we shared a bus with. It was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that happened on. Yeah, I have many stories from the Warp Tour, but yeah, that was 2 months with the Used on the bus.
Wow. Okay, we're definitely gonna talk about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about because lots of funny stuff and interesting, interestingly funny stuff that I think about it today and I'm like, wow. But even like, Newfound Glory, we knew them before they became Newfound Glory. They were called A Newfound Glory and they opened for us at the Fireside Bowl. It was like on a bill with like four bands. I think the Hippos closed the night or something like that. And yeah, and that guy became a big shot producer too, Ariel. We were like, oh, they're good, but we didn't think that a couple of years later we would be on the small Ernie Ball stage while they're shifting between NoFX and Newfound Glory on the main stage. So that was a real eye opener. So back to your question, I don't look at regrets. Like I don't consider regret. It's good to like think back and say, hey, I would have done things differently, but I don't look at it as a regret. But to give, Fat Mike told us earlier on, like I'd say it was like maybe 2003, 4. He always said you have to find your angle. And I think it took us a while to understand that because we were like, yeah, we'll just write good songs and that. But, I think all the bands that, whether they had like a major label push or whether they were getting exposure or whether like, suddenly Fall Out Boy, like this is like years later, like Fall Out Boy, Chemical Romance, that's when the scene really, really changed. All these bands had like maybe this thing that it took us a bit more time to find our thing. I think during Bad Story, we kind of got lost in the mix. And that's how I felt at the Warp Tour. There was so much going on, like at all hours of the day, that unless, let's say if I would say, hey, I'm playing every show on this tour naked, and I'm gonna do some gnarly stuff, like at the end of each show, like, I'm just like, making this stuff up now. That's what would kind of separate us from the rest of the bands that were just up there playing their show, and then.
I guess my question is more of the sounds are changing. So did you guys feel that you were keeping up? Like, did you see the crowd start to shift where they were turning away from the sound that you guys had created, or were they keeping up with you guys because they just loved the band?
Well, whoever loved the band loved the band. Like we still had fans, and I don't really feel comfortable calling them fans. I call them friends. Every time I post on Instagram or something or whatever, I'm like, hey, friends, because to me, we're all like in this together. I don't see like a separation. If someone wants to look at me or us as like this thing, so I'm like, I'm thankful and I'm humbled. But friends. So we've had many friends that like the band. I think the more I evolved as a songwriter, I tried to not pay attention to trends and kind of write what I'm feeling. It wasn't like we saw like that there was a shift because we saw that the Fat Records thing was changing because the sound of Fat was changing as well. They suddenly had like these other type bands, like Against Me and like at some point and all like Smoker Fire. And this is not like the classic No Use Lagwagon sound. And we're kind of more from that. But I feel like since we all felt that we weren't the pioneers of that sound. We weren't like the Bad Religions that were kind of like, we're the guys that do this the best. We're like, we dipped our feet in that, but we could still evolve. So we kind of went more rock on the album No Vacation. Like we brought in more influences from like, Weezer Pinkerton and this band that many people don't know about called Adventures of Jet that we were all crazy about. Another band, Ultimate Fake Book. So we were listening kind of like, even like, Super Drag. We kind of like listening to, I was trying to go for more rock and less like fast melodic hardcore songs for that matter.
What was like, would you say was the most well-received song on No Vacation from the World?
Depends where, but in Japan, at least I tried. That was like the song. The Worst Holiday did well. That song Bring Me Down was kind of like pretty much us listening to too much Sugarcult. Yeah, we were like we really liked Sugarcult, and Marco is a dear friend. So here, that's the perfect example. Sugarcult, I feel stood out from all the punk stuff that was happening, or melodic, or whether it's like other style. They kind of like dressed like they were like the Knack or something, or like the Jam or the Clash. They had like this different way about them, and like they kind of like even styled their hair, and they looked like a rock band in the middle of this whole punk thing. So I think that's what made them stand out. And not to put us down or anything, but I just think we weren't aware of these things yet. I wouldn't be surprised if I would go to sleep in the shirt I was wearing that night,
Yeah. Oh, that means you're right. Because Sugarcult, they started. Well, they were part of that whole thing where they were wearing ties that came up, and then that started to progress. And then like Avril Lavigne comes out, but she's wearing it with like a t-shirt, and then it just gets watered down. But did you guys have any pressure from, I don't know, any outside sources that were telling you to change your sound, or was that just an internal decision?
Well, Joe told us at the Warp Tour. I think Thrice joined for like a few days, and like maybe 4 days. I think they were just starting like to get recognition. They weren't a big band yet, but so Joe said, listen to Thrice and like do what they're doing.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, yeah, and I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Jesus. That's
And
so opposite of what you guys sound like.
yeah, I know. Like not that I have anything against Thrice.
Oh, I
Like
love Thrice. I think it's
yeah,
great.
I'm all right with them.
Well, I mean, no, their first album was a lot more, the Ambulance one. I don't really like that album actually. I liked everything else. I like other albums after that because I got caught with Beggars. That I think that's what sold me on them, which is way past that. But yeah, their initial stuff had that kind of a faster thing, but so opposite from you guys. That's funny that he said that.
Yeah, but here, like for example, at the Warped Tour, there was another band called Recover. Remember
Oh
them?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So once those guys showed up, it looked like they came out of like a '70s movie. Like they all had like this like kind of like a Jim Morrison haircut, really tight diesel jeans, and a tight black shirt, and so they stood out. And not that I'm saying, some bands have luck that Nirvana for that matter. I like whether it's thought through or not thought through. There's like some magic happened there that it was like kind of effortless. The guy could wake up, get out of bed, play a show, and people are like, oh my god. But some bands are conscious of it, which is also cool. But I think we're kind of like in between that. I think later on we're like, okay, I mean, if I dress like this, it just looks better afterwards with the pictures. Like if I wear an orange jeans and a green t-shirt as opposed to, black or white or red even. So you know what I mean? Kind of like basic stuff, not like putting a costume on.
I guess that's my point is that so I grew up in the Jersey punk scene. Like I got involved in it around 97 and all that was just I was thinking like 130 pounds maybe and I was wearing XL shirts and then had the big baggy shorts and it was just you match what the people did around you because it was comfortable. But then I felt in the early 2000s, you're right, like Recover comes around, it's tight pants. They're wearing like leather jackets on stage and you're thinking, it's fucking 90 degrees outside. What the fuck are you doing? I felt at that time, if you were a band trying to catch people's attention, you had to evolve and become this fashion show, or you were in it and being like, fuck that. But like, you found like maybe a middle ground where you're like, okay, we'll wear black jeans but a t-shirt, but we're not gonna dress like with cowboy boots and shit.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was. It was Cowboy, but those guys were great. Like I really enjoyed their show. It was like a breath of fresh air because we were already there for like a month and a half, and suddenly those guys show up, and it's like, oh hell yeah, they're just like playing like this heavy rock emo thing or whatever it was.
I guess my point is I appreciate when a band has their own style, but I felt there was pressure from everyone to be like, well, if you don't look like this, then we're not going to give you the time of
Yes,
day.
yes, and I think I think that happened to us along with being from Israel because you're going to be overlooked. Well, maybe now not with all that's happening in the world, you're not going to be overlooked if you're from Israel.
Yeah.
But back then, I'm sure that like an American band or even European bands, some of them had it. Like I wouldn't say Millencolin is as big as Lagwagon in the U.S. It's like Millencolin are well in the U.S., but they're great in Europe. I think it's kind of territorial as well, and we're really fortunate that we had that first footing in Japan that they got it. You know, whatever it is we did, they got it. Whether it's the songs or us as people, we just have to show up and play songs. It didn't matter, you know.
Did you guys ever play any shows with Bigwig since you guys were label mates?
Yeah, of course. Tom.
Was Matt Gray in the band at that point?
Nah, I don't think so. But I've seen a few different versions of Bigwig. Yeah, we played with them in 2003. We were on a tour with No Use for a Name, which was like a couple shows in the U.S. and then it was Canada, and we all heard that Bigwig. Canada loves Bigwig.
Huge in Canada.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So they joined for that run, and yeah, it was crazy. I was like, wow, like everyone was singing along, and like big crowds. So I think that really helped make that tour a success.
What were like the majority of your tours like? I mean, between let's say 2003 up through like 2006 era, like where you're still on Kung Fu, you got these 2 records out, and you're going on tours. Were you guys able to go out? Were you constantly going out with other bands? Were you going out by yourselves? Were you going out and being the headliners? Like, what was the mix?
So something happened at like after that No Use for a Name tour that we just stopped showing up in the States like for tours. I don't know. Something just happened that we just started more focusing on Japan, of course. Play the big show in Israel every once in a while, and Europe. We did a lot of Europe, but less U.S. If you're asking about that, it was actually good. We did that thing with No Use in 2003. Then we did a super summer tour with No Use for a Name in 2005 on a bus. And some of the best tour memories for me are from that tour, you know. It was just magical. You know, I tried shrooms for the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the Pukal Pop Festival. So I was seeing all sorts of stuff. Yeah, there's a super funny story from that one. If you just want to get sidetracked to like a quick funny story with that.
Absolutely. Yes, please talk about that.
I was just like, high. We all took mushrooms because we had a day off. Prodigy were playing and Franz Ferdinand were playing, and each show looked like, something else. The Prodigy looked like a scary movie. Our roadie that was like running around with me, I was looking at him. Suddenly he looked like a goblin, and there was all these like weird emotions going on, and we were bothering Coheed and Cambria, just like taking photos and sticking the middle finger at the last second before you press the shot at the camera. This was like pretty late in the evening, and I knew that No Use would close the night on one of the like stages. I just decided to like go to that stage a bit early because I was like so exhausted. So as I'm get close to the stage, I see this band playing, and the moon is already out. I'm seeing all these colors, and to my delusional mushroom state, they sounded amazing. They sounded, I'm not a fan of Tool, but they sounded to me like a mix of Nirvana and Tool, like the trio, but very loud. So I get close to the stage and I see the singer, guitar player, and the bass player. They're surrounded by like a million pedal effects, both of them. When they do that, it's not like the one board. It's like 5 boards surrounding you with like, wow, these guys are from another planet. And I'm just standing there, and the drummer is hitting hard. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best concert of my life. So I come to Rory from No Use in the backstage. He's just like warming up and getting ready. I'm like, these guys are amazing. And like, yo, Tom, I don't know where you're at right now, but they're pure shit.
What band was it?
Amplifier.
Amplifier.
From the UK.
I have no idea who that is.
You check them out. I like that one album, but the songs are like 6 minutes long. And I was testing myself, but I like the album, but No Use were giving me crap for it. And to finish that night off, I went through all these like emotions of like crying, and suddenly I'm happy, and suddenly, I was present, like all these like weird emotions. So I was just like, I'm done. I went on the bus. I went to the back lounge, and the roadie that was with us, he's actually the drummer of this band, Not on Tour, if you've heard of them. They're also from Israel. It's a good punk band. So he's sitting with me in the back, and I just got My Bloody Valentine Loveless, and I told him, man, I've had this album for a while, but I really want to love it, but I can't love it. Let's just put it on. So I put it on, and every song felt like an hour. Like it was like so droney and so beautiful. And so I was like, once that album was over in my state, I was like, wow, this album's amazing. And ever since, I love that album. So that's that.
What were the years where you said you went on the tour bus with the Used?
That was the Warped Tour, 2002.
So what do you remember some stories from that?
First of all, the singer Bert he stood out from the crowd. So if we're talking about people that stood out, he kind of looked like Charles Manson and Kurt Cobain, and like he just had that, and he would wear like yellow shirts. So he'd have like this thing about him. So once we realized that we're sharing a bus with him, we're like, oh, so he's with us on this bus. The thing with them is, I think their album just came out, that first album on Reprise Records. They would listen to it, I don't know, all the time. Every time I would come back to the tour bus, someone from the band or all the band, the whole band, they would put their record on, like their album on, and listen to that. And I come from the school that you don't do that. You listen to your album up until the master, and that's it. You don't praise yourself for making an album in front of people.
Were they doing it just around themselves, or they have like girls on the bus?
The girl thing came way later, but I remember at some point I would see, there was one girl with us on the bus traveling, and then I wouldn't see her anymore. Suddenly there was a new girl, and I hit up a chat with her. I was like, hey, yeah, so where are you from? He's like, yeah, I'm hanging out with Bert. I'm like, cool. And I asked Bert, hey man, I'm kind of confused. Is she your girlfriend? So he would say, for today she is.
Yeah, that sounds all right. Well, I guess that was just like, were they listening to themselves because there was other people in the bus, or was it just the four of them listening to themselves?
Well, this kind of happened to us with Bad Story. Like once we finished the album, like once we had like a mix, I remember we all sat in the car that we were using for the studio. We were like amazed. We were like, "Wow, this is us." Like, we had that moment. And I think the more albums you make, you get that feeling still. If you don't get that feeling, something's wrong with the music you're making. But it's different. It's different than the first time. So that's the first time that it happened. And I was like, I remember we were so proud of ourselves for making an album in the US, and we would play it for people. So I think they were kind of going through that phase. Now they just made an album with John Feldman, and it's better than they have ever imagined that they could sound like. So they were excited for themselves, and that's cool. But we kind of looked at it as like, what are you doing? You don't do that. It's like wearing your own band shirt.
Well, it's funny. Like, I actually today, it's been 25 years since I was in a band, and I have one of my own shirts, and I wore it. I was like, you know what? That's fine because I haven't played in forever. It's fine. But yeah, when you're in your own band, you're not like Jason from Metallica wearing it on stage.
Yeah, lame. But yeah, I remember sometimes with Useless ID, we would make like these super cool designs on a hoodie, and I'm like, I really want to wear that, but I can't.
So when you get off Kung Fu Records, I mean, Joe obviously in the beginning he was like, "Who is this? Where's the original singer?" But you guys did 3 records with them, so he obviously ended up liking your voice, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we're friends, and everything's okay. It's kind of like I told you before. I remember we had this. It was funny. It was like a one-off Warp Tour in Japan. It was like right before we recorded Redemption. So we did that. It was like us, the Vandals, Thursday, Andrew WK, like a weird mix of bands. But many of those bands were on that 2002 Warp Tour, so we kind of knew, the guys from Thursday, so we hung out with them. Yeah, so I remember I gave Joe like a CD rip of I don't know, like 5 or 7 new demos I made, like home demos, and I'm like, yeah, these are the new songs, some of the new songs we want to record. I feel that, and that was the first album we did with the Blasting Room. If you want to get into that, I would be happy to get into that. I've told this story so many times. That album gave like a new air to the band, like a new lease on life. Like that, I feel like in Redemption we became Useless ID. Like we were up until now, we were talking about like we're kind of like trying to find like what we do, like what's our thing. When the good songs are there. But I think with Redemption, Bill and Jason helped us stabilize what people know today as the Useless ID or the sound of Useless ID.
What did they say to you that made that happen?
Okay, they said a few things. One, we got in, and it was the first time we did we tracked demos at the studio for the producer to listen to, because we would just bring in demos from home or whatever, and then we just get going. Drum sound, let's start tracking drums. And they're like, no, this is how we do it here. I want you guys to be in here in Studio B for the next day and a half, record all your songs, and then we're going to sit and we're going to listen together and like break them down. And I'm like, wow. We record all the instrumental stuff. I think the following day or like later on that day, I started singing the songs. So Bill Stevenson walks in, and this is already after the whole shock of meeting him and being like, oh my God, we're not worthy. It's Bill from Descendents, All, and Black Flag. After that, like, all right, we're working now. So Bill comes in, he listens for like a couple seconds. I remember him saying I think it was Andrew, was recording us. There's like another guy, another genius, by the way, over there called Andrew Berlin. He was recording that demo with us. So Bill's like, I think his voice is a bit passive. I heard him say that. And I'm like, so I right away I tell my guys, like, they're on the other end over there with Bill. I'm like, what did he say about my voice? Is it not good? And I started panicking, and they're telling me, no, you're fine, just keep singing. So I kept recording the songs. We finished that. Then me and Bill went over to the kitchen area where there's like, there was a tape deck. We're sitting down and listening, and he's just telling me, this song, you need to sing it higher. It's not your register. You need to push through the music. He's like, when Milo sings like, "Rah!" And like, we're all like behind him, like bashing away, but you still hear Milo cutting through. And this was all like, this was like a whole world unfolding in front of me. This was like everything I ever wanted to know. So suddenly, at some point he's like, you know what? Let's go to the other room. So we go back to Studio B. The other guys were wherever. And he's like, all right, I want you to sing this song, I want to hear you sing this song. So it was like one of these songs, like, It's All Right. Okay. So, and then he's like punching my stomach. He's like, sing it, more volume. He's like, and he was just like giving me the lowdown over there. You know what I mean? That was it was a good learning experience. It was exactly what I needed. And I feel like that's when I started becoming the singer I am today, because I know how to use my voice. I know where I sound better, where I sound worse, and it's all because of Bill.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're only in your like third record by then. Let me just listen to It's All Right for 1 second. I just want to hear like where your voice is at here. Yeah, it's definitely higher. So when you do that and you start playing live shows, when your voice is like pushing more, did you have to get used to that? I mean, it's not like you're really like when I'm listening to it, you're still singing. You're not like it's not like yelling where you're blowing your voice out.
No. But here, I have a guitar next to me, so just for you, you could edit this out if you want. The original song was in A, so I was like, tune in, listen to what I have to say to you. Why be? I could sing this freely. I don't have to push my voice, don't anything. But it's all right. I won't let you down. Nice singy voice. But if it's in D, tune in, listen to. I have to push a bit in order. So that's what Bill was after, and he did that to like 5 or 6 of our songs. I was like, okay, I have to do that. And where that went bad was with the album Symptoms, that I just wrote the whole album in a register that's too high to do live. Like if you're doing that whole album, like everything's super high and screaming, but people like that album.
Do you like when you do play that album, do you guys ever do the trick of tuning a half step down just so you can keep up with older songs?
No, maybe Useless ID did that in the beginning before I was the singer. Maybe I remember something. I remember like trying to play along with one of their songs, and I'm like, yeah, there's no chance that they're playing it in like A flat.
So you've kept it regular tuning all this time?
Yes, always. I don't know
that's
why.
awesome.
Like, with my solo stuff, I just play with tunings. I do like Dadgad or like drop D or like tune a string. But with Useless ID, we're like, plug and play. Like there's not really many pedals going on either. It's just like straight to the amp. That's the sound you get.
All right. So between Kung Fu and then, there's a big gap of time here. So in between that, you got like Suburban Home Records. You go on Anna, and I can't pronounce.
Anana?
Anana. Yeah, Anana, but there's like a symbol next to it.
Oh yeah. So there's that. There's I think Rude Records. There's Suburban Home, and like I think it was like a 5-label album with Lost Broken Bones.
Wait, a 5-label album?
Yeah, I think that album came out like
Yeah. Okay.
Bullet Records Japan, Suburban Home US, Anana in Israel, and Rude Records UK, and maybe one more label. It's like a 4 or 5 territorial thing. After that, we're never doing this again. We need to get on a label, and that's when Fat finally came around.
Yeah, how'd you do that? It's because, you figure like by 2004, by that time, I mean, that seems like a lifetime for a band. And then you fast forward 8 years and you get on Fat Records. So in that 8 years, was there a point where What did the band do? You don't have to go like, in full length, but kind of like a bullet point where we kept touring, we toured like less, we stopped going to the States. Like what was the kind of the majority of that time period looking like?
Yeah, we stopped going to the States, but we were super happy with Redemption. I still love that album. But when Fat Mike heard it, like we met him around that time I was telling you about with that tour with No Use with the Mushrooms. And at the end of that tour in 2005, NoFX played like one of the festivals. I think it was like Rock and Idro or something like that. So we were with Fat Mike on the bus talking to him as we would tend to do every time we'd see him. And he's like, yeah, so you guys sound like No Use for a Name, and your name is like No Use for a Name. One of these things has to go.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah, his brutal honesty is something else. But he's like, why don't you sing about politics? There's like so much crap happening in Israel, and you're singing about like relationships, and we're like, scratching our heads. I don't know. But we have one guy in the band, Guy. He's the political one. He grew up on Crass and Conflict and Dead Kennedys, and that's his bread and butter. But I came from more like social problems music. Like less politics, more like Gorilla Biscuits and the positive message and Minor Threat or even Bad Religion. But I don't think Bad Religion is to the same extent as Conflict or Crass or all the like super angry UK at the government bands. So yeah, that happened later on, like way later with the album State is Burning. But that's what he told us about Redemption. It kind of planted a seed in our heads. And then when I started writing for like the next album, it kind of sounded like the songs of Redemption. So I kind of stopped myself. I'm like, I feel like I'm writing like a follow-up same record. So that's why it took us like 4 years, the 2 years or the 1 year that we were doing. We were on fire with this first 3 albums. But then I think we needed to kind of like figure some stuff out. And eventually Lost Broken Bones was like a heavier album. And like it's like way different than Redemption. And I like when bands do that sometimes. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss. But it still sounded like Useless ID, but it was more aggro, and it did not sound like No Use for a Name. Once Fat Mike heard Lost Broken Bones, he was like, I like it, but I got a lukewarm response from The Office. That was, by the way, the first time I heard the term lukewarm. I thought it has to do with coffee, but they weren't too super excited, and I'm like, even now. So
But was that like frustrating? Like when you're was that a point where you were just talking to Fat Mike and being, okay, like we really want to be in this label, we'll do anything to get on it, or it was just, okay, we like Fat Records, but if we don't get on it, we really don't give a fuck?
No, I'd say we were in the first version you gave. I wasn't talking to him that much yet. I was kind of like okay with him. So Ishai was talking to him. Ishai made it clear that, hey, listen, we really want to be on Fat. We love your label. We grew up on your label, And it's true. Like that was always the goal with Useless ID. But then he's like, it's not going to happen. So then the 5 album thing came around, and fast forward to 2010, and we're recording the album. No, 2011 we recorded Symptoms. Sorry. We're recording Symptoms. Brandon from bless his soul. He
Teenage Bottle Rocket.
Yeah, he passed on. He used to show up at the studio like all the time. He would just come hang out. So we became cool friends with him. I think he would listen every once in a while to what we were doing, and we're like, yeah, Fat Mike's like not into us, and he's like, I'm gonna talk to Fat Mike. And then we're like, okay, well, good luck. And then, so once we finished the album, Bill was like, I think this is the best record you ever made, Symptoms. So he's like, I'm going to talk to Fat Mike too. And then we're like, okay, so we're also going to talk to Fat Mike. So he has like a 3-way invasion in his head from all these like different people. And it worked. He got back to us and he said, I'm going to put this album out. And the funny thing is, that's our least sounding Fat album ever. Like I think it's closer to like a rock album more than Lost Broken Bones.
Give me a song that's on it that you think sounds like so different from the old stuff.
Oh wow. I'm thinking. No, wait. Symptoms. The song Symptoms, the title track.
Oh wow, that's good harmonies in the chorus. To build on that question, Fat is a completely different sounding record label at this point, like you pointed out. Against Me gets on it around like 2001, 2002, or whenever they did Eternal Cowboy, and then they get like this beer rock sound. They get Lawrence Arms, they get Teenage Bottle Rocket, they get fucking, I don't know, just this whole different sound. So the sound's changing. So when you guys get on it, the bands aren't the same. So are you still loving the label based on what you heard growing up, or are you still keeping up with the label and loving the bands that are on it currently when you get signed?
Well, we're keeping up with the label because, once we got signed, we did some Fat tours as well, and like, Fat Showcase and the Fat tour with the Flatliners. So we love the Flatliners. We love those guys. But, bands like, I don't want to put any band down. Everyone's putting.
Have to. It's not like asking you to like shit on any bands.
Yeah, but my personal taste, there's like several bands on the label where I think we were already kind of like from the old school, that we were happy with another Lagwagon record. Let's put it that way. Or like No Use was gone by that time. They were our element. Let's say that was our like thing.
I guess it's just interesting because if you're not expecting, like you're wanting to get on a label that sounds a completely different way. And by the time you get on it, you're like, we don't even care that it's different. We just, for nostalgia reasons or whatever, we still want to be on this label.
I think it was all the reasons together, for nostalgia reasons and for what we set out to do as a band. And I think that's a big deal for a band from Israel. Come on, like.
Oh no, I'm not shitting on it anyway. I think it's just like where your mindset is.
I'm just saying in general, because I think we opened the door for like, bands like Not on Tour that came after us. Suddenly, they're signing to Spam Records in Europe, which is a big European label. I think it really helped like lots of other bands that kind of like opened the doors, that like, wow, this band could. And it comes along with, doing a lot of hard work as well, putting in the work and effort and believing that it's possible. And we got there. But the album that came out after Symptoms, State is Burning, that was the album Fat Mike, he didn't even hesitate. I sent him the mixes. We were kind of thinking, should we wait for the master to send him, or like mixes? Is that okay? And they were like, let's wait. But I secretly sent Fat Mike the mixes, and he got back to me that same night. He's like, oh hell yeah, I'm putting this out. I'm like, yes. And then later on, he told me in person, he's like, that should have been your first record, because that record's all politics,
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was all into that shit back then.
Yeah, that was when, like, I was feeling the politic stuff as well, just from living in Israel. I was like, wow, I'm living in a war zone now. Maybe I'll write about that.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's pretty fucking real when you're like seeing it. What was your experience like on Fat? Like, when you're getting on it, you're like, we just want to do it because these bands. But when you're in the internal part of it and seeing how the machine is built, like, how did that help the band?
First of all, the people there are amazing. Every time and any time I'm in San Francisco, I stop by the office. I speak to Bart and Pat or whoever's there, whoever from the office is there. We hang out. We talk stuff for an hour. I grab a shirt or whatever, or maybe not grab a shirt, but I'm always happy to see them, and we've become friends over the years. So Fat Records is like, as people say, it is like kind of like a fat family. Like once you're in, you're in. People kind of like hold that to you. So only good experiences, honestly. Like everything. Like it's a really special label. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I've never heard anything bad about Fat. There's some labels out there where like Victory always comes up as just being such a shit show because of Tony. Mike is so funny because he's such a wild card, but he's so business at the same time.
Yeah, no, exactly. Mike is a wild card. Like, I could build this whole idea in my head, and I wouldn't say he would shut it down in a minute, like in a second, but I would present it to Mike, and he would just kind of like quickly break it down in his head and tell me why it's a bad idea. He's like, no, don't do that. Do this. Whether it'll work or not. But here, just for an example, we recorded this live album that we wanted to release. So I came to Fat Mike with it. I was like, hey, listen, I know you do live and a dive sometimes. We would really love to do one, and we have the songs. What do you say? He's like, nah, let's do a best of Useless ID and record a few new songs. I'm like, I wasn't planning on that, but tell the guys that that's what we're doing. But at the end, that came out on Fat, and I'm happy. That kind of respects the band. Like, it really kind of like sums up the whole idea of us kind of, starting where we did. being in Haifa, Israel, watching late night MTV and seeing a video by No Use for a Name for the first time and falling in love with it and rewinding the tape up until this point where this label that, really shaped us. And it's not only No Use, High Standard, Lagwagon, even like No Effects, if you consider them later on a fat band, Propaganda from back in the day. These bands really shaped us. So to get this 20-something song album, or I don't know how many songs are on that, maybe 15, 17, on the best of, it kind of like, it's kind of like a full circle moment where like, wow, this label that we kind of like held high and respected our whole lives respects us back. Like they really see us, and it was wonderful that they did that. We eventually did release the double LP with this other label called Double Helix. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, because that came out. So Double Helix comes out in 2023. So this is 3 years after the pandemic. So that's interesting. When was the live album recorded? That
was recorded for the 25th band anniversary. I had this idea, like I was like, let's get a setup to record it because I think it's going to be special. But the sound guy, he hit the record button like I don't know, like a few seconds after the first song. So we kind of like meshed the sound of the video camera into the first song.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we made it happen. But yeah, that was the 25th in 2019. So it means like we just crossed the 30-year mark with Useless ID and we didn't do anything.
Well, that's crazy because you do it in 2019 and then obviously it gets paused because everything goes to fucking shit for a minute.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think many people feel that time kind of feels differently since COVID. I don't know. Some people say, oh my God, time is flying by. Everything's passing too fast. And some people are just like, the world is just a weird freaking place these days. And it just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder. I'm of the people that I think I kind of like try to detach myself from everything and like do small things like, go for a walk or go for a jog, not be with my phone. And that kind of keeps me sane because the world is a mad place right now.
When you guys were on, and I'll start wrapping this up soon, but do you have any cool stories from being on the road with No Use for a Name, especially since like Tony passed away?
Oh, I have many stories.
And what were those guys like? What were they like to tour with?
Okay, let's start with this one. This is one it also dates back to the Warped Tour, okay? So in 2002, the Warped Tour, Bad Story, Happy Ending's out, and we're looking for a producer for our next album. So Ishai says, hey, I heard that, Tony Sly from No Use for a Name did something. You want to try talking to him? And I'm like, yeah, if he produces, why not? Like, we love his songwriting. And they just released Hard Rock Bottom, and that was a great album. We approached Tony, introduced ourselves, and he's like, yeah, I know you guys. I remember you. I think Guy gave him like the demo tape at the bottom of the hill, like a few years before that. Like before I was in the band, he got the Useless ID demo tape, and he liked it. I don't know. But he was down, we were like in our very early 20s. So Tony was like, we looked up to him. So he said, you know what, come by the No Use for a Name bus. I have guitars over there. The first time I go to the No Use for a Name bus, we go to the back lounge over there. And, there's like 2 acoustic guitars. And on one of the acoustic guitars, there was like the Useless ID sticker. Now, I don't know if he prepared it on the acoustic guitar just because I was coming or if it was there already, but I like to think it was there already. So anyways, we sit across each other and I show him some songs and like he changes like a chorus and like he shows me, hey, instead of playing 4 chords in this chorus, why don't you like keep going with the chords? He's like, and then, when we wrapped it up, he's like, all right, tomorrow the buses are going to stop. You go to Walmart, get yourself a tape recorder and make it your best friend. And I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah, Fat Mike told me to do that. And now I'm passing it on to you. So that's what I did. I went and bought a tape recorder. I just started recording like a madman, all these ideas. I have like even recordings of me and Tony Sly working. Like I have them somewhere.
Wow. That's awesome.
Now, the crazy thing about this is, so the summer happens and I keep going to the No Use bus and like, and then Tony Sly says, hey, I think I wrote a Useless ID song. He presents me with this song and I already hear the arrangement in my head. So I go back to the guys with it and I'm like, yeah, Tony said he wrote a Useless ID song, but it sounds like No Use. Are we going to do it? And they're like, of course we're going to do it. Tony wrote the song. So that's Stuck Without a Ride from No Vacation from the World. Many years later, we're at the blasting room. We're doing the Lost Broken Bones. And No Use for a Name were just there. And they recorded the Feel Good album of the year. You know that one?
Is it the white one?
No, that's More Betterness. That Feel Good album is like the last one they did. So they just recorded that. So we're at the studio. And on one of the shelves in the living room, I see a tape recorder like mine. So I'm like, I wonder what's this. So I take it and I play the cassette that's inside, and it kind of like sounds like a familiar voice. It kind of sounds like what I would do, but it's not me. It's like someone else like working on a song. And then at some point I'm like, holy shit, this is Tony. Oh my God, Tony left his tape recorder here. So I'm like, I'll just take it and I'll give it to him when I see him. Weirdly enough, No Use for a Name did come to Israel a year later, and and it was also my 30th birthday. So Tony Sly, they all came to my birthday as well, and we were all having a blast. Tony was singing Dag Nasty songs and Gorilla Biscuits and whatever. Like we just did like 30 covers for 30 years, whatever. So it was a great time. Yeah, Matt joined and played bass. So, but in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna give the tape back to Tony at some point. Yeah, I think the last time I saw him was South by Southwest 2010 for like a minute. And maybe I let him know that I started to do a solo album. And the next thing you know, you get the news like that he passed away. So I kind of take it like as a gift, like his gift to me, kind of like a full circle gift. And I have that tape recorder with me till today. It's right by mine.
Wow, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Especially because that's the one. Well, I mean, that's probably one of many, or like some versions later where he just kept that whole process going, and he, like you said, he told you about it, and do you still do that? Do you still record on a tape recorder?
Now on my
phone. On your phone.
Now I do voice memos, and I have this whole system like how to save the song, the type of songs I like, and like the song ideas. So yeah, I still do that to this day. Just it's much easier with the phone. You don't have to walk around with cassettes and.
Wow, that's crazy, dude. The band now, what keeps you guys still doing this now for all these years?
Well, we've kind of been on hiatus since 2022. Yeah, I'm trying to keep track of the years here. We did like a tour with Descendents in the summer of 2022. Then I got married, and then I was like, all right, guys, the band's over. No, I'm kidding. But I did get married, but then I moved to the States for like, I was like working on a green card process that failed because I had terrible lawyers. So that didn't work out. And so now I'm in Italy. And I think the biggest problem is that we don't live in the same place. And like, everyone has their own bands and their own things in life. But the band is just on a break, It's like, no, we're not like going out on a, hey, we're breaking up. We don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to see each other anymore. Thank you for the melodies. No, it's just like, I think at this point, like a band that existed for 25 plus years or 30 years or what, 31, 30. So it's like, you could kind of like kick back, come back. You could, disappear, come back. So I think we're at that point where we know what we did. We appreciate it. Hopefully the future will bring more and more things. We have first time on vinyl, No Vacation from the World coming out in May. So that's like the next exciting thing.
Well, cool, man. All right. Well, I'll start wrapping this up. Since you've already told a lot of great stories, I feel like I usually ask if there's a story you want to tell and have never told in an interview before you want to tell now. So you could think about it, but you've already told a bunch of really good stories, so it's up to you.
A story I've never told before.
Yeah.
I'll have to boggle my brain for a minute. Thinking.
No rush.
Here's a little one for you. I'm a super fan of the Pixies, okay? Like my 1 and 2 best ever are Nirvana, then Pixies. And then, Beatles and Beach Boys and Bad Religion. Like, not that they have anything to do with each other, but, then the Gorilla Biscuits, I don't know. It's hard for me to make but my 1 and 2 is always Nirvana and Pixies. When we wrapped up the Warped Tour, we were just before recording No Vacation, so they split so Guy went to stay with his sister. We already covered that. His sister lives in LA. And they put us up in a hotel room, like a motel room. So one night I had a dream that I'm going to like a Frank Black show. That's the singer of the Pixies, Black Francis, Frank Black. He changes his name. So I wake up in the morning and I tell Ishai, I just had this crazy dream that we're going to see Frank Black at a show. And then he tells me, dude, you're crazy. He's playing Amoeba Records today. I'm like, what? And I'm like, this is mad. And I'm like, we gotta go. So he's like, okay. So we go to Amoeba Records, and Ishai's like a big vinyl collector, so he's like scrolling the aisles, just like looking for vinyl. And I see Frank Black setting up his stuff over there, and I'm like, okay. So I'm gonna go across the street. I'm gonna get like an iced tea to drink, and I'll be right back. So I get back, and he already started playing some Pixies songs. He just released a new album, The Devil's Workshop. And then I see like a sign that says that the CDs are $13. For a guy that just got off Warped Tour, $13 was a lot of money back then. For a guy that was broke after Warped Tour. So I tell Ishai, man, $13 is a bit much. Do you think I should get it? He's like, yeah, go. He's like, go buy the CD. You should go buy the CD, wait in line, and, have him sign it. I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I get in line, and I'm about to see him. I see he's like looking down, signing to us. Yeah, thank you. Next. He's like signing next. And then, as I'm getting closer, everything becomes like this crazy slow motion. I'm having like this initial shock that I'm about to meet one of my idols. And then I'm like standing right in front of him. I'm not saying anything. He looks up to me, and I'm like, hey, man. And now I got his attention, and everyone's standing and waiting in line. I'm like, hey man, I just want you to know that your music changed my life, and I'm also in a band, and everything I write is because of you. So thank you. So he's like, oh man, thank you. So I'm like, is it okay if we get a picture? So it's like, yeah, sure. So I come around, I give my camera to the guy next in line. Now I forgot that my camera was a bit problematic. It was one of the camera when you press like the shot, it takes like 3-4 seconds, then it takes the picture. Remember those? I'm there hugging Frank Black, for more than a few seconds, and the guy's trying to press, and it's not working, and I'm still hugging him. I'm like, all right, this is awkward. And then Frank Black bear hugs me. He brings me even closer, and I'm like, okay, this is super weird. And just as he's about to let go, the flash goes off, and so the flash goes off. Frank Black's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, thank you, I'm going. And then when I got the picture, I was like, yes, it got the picture. Like the flash went off after the photo. So I got the photo that me and him are hugging. So yeah.
I love you just like, it's so awkward. You're like, okay, this is getting weird.
Yeah, I mean, he's still hugging me. And I'm like, and in these situations, time really passes slow. It's like every second is like, oh my God.
Well, cool, dude. All right, so before I'll ask the last question, is there something you'd like to plug? It could be about you. It could be about a friend or a cause. It could be about all of them.
I opened my own record label with my wife. It's called California Sounds. And we released my new album, Reflections of You, on it. So that's my latest release. Go on tour April 26th, and I will be touring all over Europe. Yeah, that's what's happening for now.
Okay. Is that like your full-time gig, doing your solo stuff?
Well, that and I'm a remote producer. I produce bands and people and songwriters online. I help them with their songs.
How do you like still being in the whole, and I mean, yeah, how do you like still doing this and being involved in music? Is it still as fun, or has it become kind of a job?
Well, there were certain times in my life that it did become a job because it was a job. I was like a bass player for this big production that was, that it was like really play the song and pick up the paycheck at the end of the month. But I decided that I never want to do that. I never want to put myself in that position again where that's my life, that I'm kind of relying. So I love working with people on songs because it's become such second nature to me. I mean, I could, if someone sends me a song, I could listen to it. And while I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's change that. Let's change the chord. I'm super quick with that. So I enjoy it. I love it. And, I love listening to new music. I love discovering old bands from the 80s. And yeah, I'm all about it. The excitement is always there. If the excitement is not there, there's something wrong. And I probably should be doing something else. But yeah, I'm writing new songs now. Yeah.
Do you
Music.
pass on
What?
the recording thing that Tony Sly told you to other people?
Of course, of course. Like a few years ago, I like during COVID when it was hard to exist, I opened this group of songwriters. There were like five, six songwriters that we would Zoom every week, and and I would be the teacher. So yeah, I also told them, but now they kind of do it anyways because you have like the voice memo option on your phone. But I give a bunch of exercises. Try doing this today. Try writing a song like that. Think that you're someone else. I just throw all these curveballs that open up your mind to be a better songwriter.
All right, last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Okay, this brings me back to some like a post that I'm gonna post in 2 days. So 2 days from now, since we're with this was the scene, 2 days from now is 30 years to my first show, playing my first show ever with my band Rampage, and I just kind of and I'm gonna put the post up with a video of me at a very young age, but what I take from the scene and is, I'm telling you, and you probably do know, but the DIY ethic, always do it yourself. Because if you're going to do it yourself, probably won't get screwed. But not with everyone. But that's the start of it. Like I like when people just take their energy and do something they want to do and not think too much over it. I kind of shift back and forth between being vegan and vegetarian, but that's been going on also for like 30 years. I'm a positive person, even though it's very hard to be a positive person sometimes. But I try to keep the PMA and try to enjoy the small things in life. And yeah, man. So that's what the scene gave me. The scene gave me a voice, and the scene showed me that it's okay to be who I am and not try to fit in and not try to be someone else and not try to be like someone else. Yeah,